In the summer of 1984, San Francisco is gripped by fear. Neighbors, family, and friends are vanishing without a trace. Police are perplexed. The investigation takes a deadly turn when a killing field is uncovered high in the California mountains. As the body count climbs, the evidence points to an elusive killer. To bring this murderer to justice, a small-town prosecutor must take a long, dark journey into the mind of a serial killer. On the morning of October 26, 1998, the longest and most expensive criminal trial in California history got underway. With an investigation spanning 13 years and a case file weighing over 2 tons, the burden of prosecuting one of California's most notorious killers would fall on Peter Smith, the district attorney of Calaveras County.
A prosecutor's job is to seek justice. I think many people look at prosecutors and think their job is to convict and put people in jail or prison, and that's part of the job too. But it really is our responsibility to make sure the justice system, particularly the criminal justice system, is carried out fairly to the point where justice is always sought.
On June 2, 1985, a South San Francisco dispatch operator received a call. A theft was in progress at South City Lumber.
31 Boy 1, 1087 Robert 1 at South City Lumber, Railroad and Spruce, on a 488 shoplifting.
Officer Daniel Wright of the South San Francisco Police Department responded to the call.
I had just 1 year on the street at that time, and my thoughts were, officer safety, be careful. Like any call you go to, things could go awry at any time.
A witness told Wright he had seen an Asian male stealing a $75 table vise. He said the thief, when confronted, tossed the vise into the trunk of a brown Honda and fled on foot. Inside the Honda, Wright spotted a suspicious-looking case.
I opened up the case and found a .22 Ruger with a cylinder-shaped object that was probably 6 to 9 inches long. And through my training, I observed it to be a silencer.
The gun was illegally modified. As Wright took a closer look, an agitated man burst from the store.
Calm down.
He told the officer he paid for the vise his friend had taken. Wright's supervisor, Sergeant Paul Ziemer, arrived on the scene. The gun in the Honda made both officers suspicious. The car was impounded.
At that time, we told him that he was going to be going down to the station to give a statement about the weapon. And he was handcuffed and placed into Officer Ziemer's vehicle and brought to our station.
On the way to the station, the man told Ziemer the shoplifter's name was Charles Ng.
Dispatch, I got an ID on that Asian male subject.
The officer used his radio to request a background check on Ng.
November Golf.
They got a hit. Ng was a former Marine, born in Hong Kong. He'd been convicted in military court for stealing automatic weapons from a military base in Hawaii. He had once escaped from a military prison. At the South San Francisco police station, the subject was placed in a secure holding room. He told the officer his name was Leonard Lake. He said he was a fugitive from justice and offered to make a statement. But first, he wanted a piece of paper,
All right, sir.
a pencil, and a glass of water.
Write your statement. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Zemer left the room to summon Gary Hopper, the on-call detective that Sunday. When they returned, Lake was on the floor, convulsing wildly. Detective Hopper called the paramedics.
He was flopping around on the floor. It was very violent, like a fish flapping out of water, uncontrollable. We had no idea what was happening at the time, whether it was like an epileptic seizure or just what was going on.
Detective Hopper called the paramedics.
Once the paramedics got him to the emergency hospital, we found out a little later that they were finding no activity at all in his brain, that he was apparently brain dead.
An autopsy later revealed that Lake had ingested capsules containing cyanide.
The doctor told me and the lab technicians told me that it took about 20 to 25 minutes for the gel cap to dissolve before the cyanide actually hit his system, and that would probably coincide fairly well with the amount of time between he was at the lumber yard and brought to the police station.
Rather than writing a statement, Lake had written a note to a woman named Lynn. The note read, "Dear Lynn, I love you. I forgive you. Freedom is better than all else. I'm sorry, Mom, Patty, and all. I'm sorry for all the trouble. Love, Leonard." Police were perplexed. Why had the suspect taken his own life? Whatever secrets Leonard Lake held, he took to the grave. The answer might lie with Lake's companion, Charles Ng. Police issued a warrant for Ng's arrest for shoplifting. Then they processed the car Lake had been driving. When they ran the serial number on the Honda's engine block, investigators discovered that the car belonged to Paul Cosner. Cosner, a Bay Area resident, had been missing for 7 months.
Hello?
Detective Irene Brunn of the San Francisco Police Department investigated Cosner's disappearance. Cosner's sister had reported him missing months earlier.
I'll be in a half hour. And she was quite distraught. Her brother had disappeared. He had had a date that evening with his girlfriend for dinner, who also lived in the same apartment building where he lived. He failed to show up for that dinner date, and in speaking to the girlfriend, Paul was going to show a car that he was selling through an advertisement in the paper.
Cosner was only one of many strange cases involving missing persons in the Bay Area. Detective Brunn was also investigating the disappearance of an entire family. On July 25, 1984, San Francisco police responded to a frantic call for help. Harvey Dubbs, his wife, and their 16-month-old son, Sean, hadn't been seen for several days. Police had to climb through a window to gain access to the Dubbs apartment.
San Francisco Police Department, anybody on the premises?
The Dubbs family had indeed disappeared, and the signs of a struggle were apparent. Days earlier, Harvey Dubbs had placed an ad in the newspaper to rent out his video equipment. That equipment was now missing. Missing person cases usually fit a certain profile. They often involve teenage runaways or people who disappear without telling anyone, only to return a few days later. In the case of the Dubbs, it was clear the family hadn't left voluntarily. Detective Brunn feared they would never return.
In the house, there were things that were unusual and out of order. The baby's room was out of order. Deborah's medication was left at home, and it was something she had to take every day. So there were a lot of things that didn't look right. They left their cats locked in the house unattended, and they wouldn't have done that.
It is unusual for people like Paul Cosner or the Dubbs family to simply vanish without a trace. Without